Welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 36 now, the Jerome Bettis episode. Uh, Maybe we should just do that, like name every episode that we can after a player that we remember then having that number. We
Yeah,
will
that's
eventually run out, I suppose. But anyway, sorry, I'm your co-host, Chris. I'm the philosophy professor and the Steelers fan here.
I'm Ajay Nair. I am the psychiatrist and the Chiefs fan here. Thanks to all of you who are following along on YouTube or wherever you download the podcast, and to those of you who follow us on social media at STCF715 on Twitter, Instagram, and again on TikTok now. There was a brief
Oh
time
wait,
when
is it back
TikTok
now?
It's back.
Wow.
Uh,
Like as of I tried to open the app this morning and it still gave me that message that it was
oh,
like
it
coming
did?
back.
I,
Yeah, well maybe.
it worked for me when I thought I tried it today.
Okay.
And I'm going to open it right now. This is great audio.
Is
It's going
TikTok
to
back?
be
Yeah.
riveting. You
I'll
can
try it
see,
as
like,
well.
well, it's nothing right now.
Trump doesn't think that is
Oh,
worth
look.
you.
There it
Oh
is.
yeah, I
It's
see it.
TikTok. It's happening. Yeah, there was some
Maybe.
message like thanking President Trump because apparently he said that
Yeah.
he wasn't going to enforce the ban. So,
Yeah, I'm still getting that message. I don't know if you can see this.
what?
Yeah.
Oh,
But then it gives me the option to close the app and now I can just reopen it and there the app's back. Welcome back. Okay, great. I think that was
so
just I clicked through it.
we are on TikTok. So I guess the comment of the week, I'm not going to so much read the comment as just explain advice from a commenter, which I feel like is probably useful advice for people regarding the film reviews. Uh, at OVO Cow, I don't know if it's just at OVO Cow. Ovo does, like the root of ovo is cow, right? If you add ovo to something, I think that means cow.
Is that like is that where bovine comes from?
I think so. I mean, this is speculation, so I could be wrong, but we'll have this information for you at some point.
It's
We'll
probably
do a
tied to
gauntlet style.
yeah. Right.
But at OvoCow9512 advises people who watch the film reviews and struggle with the pace to put the playback speed to 1.5 or 1.75. And I would just say, if you do find the film reviews boring, try it. Maybe that'll help. I tend
I
to be a
find them
somewhat
very nice at the pace that they are, the 1.0 speed. I think that's like my speed of thinking more or less. So that works for me. But I am slow as a thinker. So yeah, I think
me
that's right.
too, as the film reviews show. So, so maybe people will find them more enjoyable at a faster speed.
Yeah, I wonder the speed of thinking is an interesting topic. That's a great philosophical topic. We should talk about that sometime. Anyway,
Yeah,
not now.
I yeah. At some point, we need to remember also to talk. I once had an advisor tell me that he thought that intelligence was a measure of how quickly you can retrieve memory, and I didn't agree with that. But I would be interested to have a discussion on that at some point. Um,
Yeah, we should. That would be fun. I have plenty of thoughts about the word intelligence in general, but they're not very packaged for the moment.
And just talking about regular commenters too, I feel like I got to shout out at Cash Out Season one more time because that person has continued to comment on our podcasts, and I'm quite confident actually that you're listening right now, and thank you very much for your engagement. We appreciate you, and
Yeah, thank you,
thanks.
Cash App. What if it's like maybe it's Vladik or something like that?
I know, wouldn't that be funny if it was like someone we knew that was like, oh, what? We'll see.
Or it could be anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. For all you know, I'm Cash Out Season, and I have been posting. But seriously, though, thank you. We appreciate it. Um, well, the Chiefs
Yeah.
played this weekend. I guess
Yeah.
we should talk about it.
Yeah. Well, they did you say play or played?
Played.
Played. Yeah, they played and they will play, which
They
is
will
the
play
good
too.
news.
Yeah, that's true. Spoiler alert: the Chiefs won.
Um, yeah. If somehow you haven't heard, they did. Yeah. So I have like questions about the game, what it was like for you, maybe. But yeah, they won. That's the that's the big news. I guess our plan is talk about that and talk about the other games because there's a lot of there were a lot of interesting games this weekend, and then preview next week as much
Sounds
as we
good.
can. So I guess maybe I should just give you the blank slate again. What do you th what were your thoughts or feelings about this game?
It didn't really play out like I thought it was going to, honestly. I think there were two aspects of this game that were surprising to me. One was that I thought the offense would look a little sharper. We did talk about last week that one way that there could be a problem would be if the Texans' defensive line was, really taking over the game, and that was happening, especially early in the game. We had trouble blocking them. They're a good defensive line. I will shout out Jawan Taylor had an awesome game at right tackle, but beyond that, there were some struggles, and I think that did affect us offensively. I think the part of it that I did not account for and I didn't think about was that they have good corners, particularly Derek Stingley, and we didn't seem like we were that interested in challenging their corners at all. Uh, Xavier Worthy is the only receiver that had yardage in this game, a wide receiver.
Wow.
We were really just targeting the middle of the field. When we did get Xavier Worthy's big play, it was motioning him out of the backfield, so we had non-primary defensive back on him. So it seemed very intentional by the Chiefs to avoid targeting their outside corners. And so DeAndre Hopkins wasn't very involved. Hollywood Brown had a deep catch that he dropped, but really there wasn't a lot going on. Even Xavier Worthy, most of his targets were kind of gadget behind the line of scrimmage plays. So that I had not considered adequately. It wasn't as much of a problem, honestly, the first time we played them. And I think it's because the Texans played a lot of man coverage and we had a lot of man beaters going. This time around, they mixed it up a lot. They played a lot of quarters. That was seemed to be their primary zone coverage they were playing, and they did have some man snaps, and we did burn them on man a couple times. One was made just a complete blown coverage, but uh, it was a different game plan from what we had seen before Christmas, and their corners played well, and we just weren't interested in challenging them whatsoever. So that was surprising. The other part of the game that surprised me was I thought our run defense was going to be very good in this game, and we did not do so well. Really, I don't know that we ever turned it on. It was just that we got into a game time where the game script indicated that the Texans would pass more, and that is when Steve Spagnuolo decided, screw it, I'm just going to blitz, and that was very effective. He had some really well-timed blitzes that were counters to what he was doing earlier in the game, and it completely confused the Texans' protections.
Do you think on the offensive side, Chiefs offensive side, do you think they were expecting a different coverage tactics than or strategies than they got? Do you think they were expecting more like man coverage like they got in the first meeting, or was it just that they came in thinking, no, we're gonna use the middle of the field mainly here because they have good corners?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I definitely do think that they were expecting more man coverage. I think that was an intentional tendency break from the Texans, but it also just seems like they weren't really looking for especially the guys out wide. They weren't really looking for them very much. And there was also a timing issue. Like Mahomes was having to get the ball out quickly, and when he was holding it, he was getting rushed around the edge and stepping up. And when he was doing that, he was really looking toward the middle of the field.
And Kelsey was often there, so that he had his good yard after catch game that we sort of expected in the playoffs, right? um, I wonder if this was more like, was he in the positive? He probably was in the positive expected yards after catch in this one or whatever, yards after catch above expectation, because he made a couple people
So
miss and got big chunks.
I couldn't find playoff stats on Next Gen Stats. I went to look for this because I was very curious, but I couldn't find them. I will say what I did find was that Travis Kelsey, the entire regular season, had a total of 18 yards after a broken tackle, if you sum all of his receptions the entire year. In this game, he had 33 yards after broken tackles. So I would imagine his yards after catch over expectation look a lot better. The funny thing is he didn't look faster. He looked a little more agile than he did in the regular season. Like he actually broke some tackles. But he didn't look faster. Like he had that 49-yard catch like 3 years ago. Like he takes that to the house. Like he,
Yeah.
that long speed isn't quite the same anymore. But yeah, he definitely, it was really shocking to see him make people miss in the middle of the field. It was like, where did that come from? We haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, but he does seem I mean, he and Mahomes both seem to like up their agility a bit in the playoffs, and like one wonders how. Because Mahomes had a scramble or two as well, where it seemed like, oh, there's an extra level of juice there that we're not used to from the regular season. And I remember that happening last year in the playoffs too.
And you definitely do see some interesting play calls that I don't remember ever seeing this, and it's possible I just missed it in the regular season, but Andy Reid ran this play against man coverage where I talked about it in the film review as like the closest equivalent I have is to the isolation play in basketball. So a lot of times in basketball, when you need a basket, you just take your best player and you clear everybody else out and try to get him to go one-on-one against a defender and get a bucket. And they did that with Travis Kelce against man. They essentially had on the right side, they had like a clear out route and they had Kareem Hunt go to the flat. And on the left, they had like a clear out route and an out route. And they just left the middle of the field open and cover one. And they were just like, Travis, you're one-on-one with your guy, go win. And then they basically just drew all the defense out wide. And Travis went one-on-one and one over the middle and made a big catch. Like, that was really cool to see. Like, there were a couple that were schemed up where you could tell it was like, this is for Travis Kelce. And if it's not Travis Kelce, then we're going into backyard football because nobody else is like an actual option on this play. There was another third
Yeah.
down that was like that against a zone where they just ran everybody up the field and had Travis Kelce chip block at the beginning and leak out late. And it was basically like nobody else was really running a route. It was just like take everybody down, get it to Kelce underneath, and he can go after the catch and get the first down, which he did. Like it was very
Yeah.
interesting how these are like one route concepts. It seems like sometimes they run, just using everybody to let Travis have the room to operate and do what he has to do.
Yeah. Uh, Save those for the playoffs, I guess. But you can, it's very clear, I guess, on those plays, like what the intention is, right? Sometimes you can't tell quite what the plan is on a play, or you can speculate. But on those ones, I think you're probably, it's like, no, we know what we're doing. Everyone knows what we're doing here, at least in hindsight. Um, did you think, uh, so I guess maybe coming out of it, are you more relieved or concerned about the way the defense played? I mean, in general, I guess I want to ask this about both sides of the ball, but and maybe actually I should ask you about the offense first because we were just talking about the offense. So, coming out of this, are you more relieved or concerned about the way the offense played?
I'm not. The only thing that's a little concerning to me is the offensive line. Everything else, like I know the guys, Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins can play. They didn't even play DeAndre Hopkins in that many snaps. So the one thing that's a little concerning for me is like, is he hurt? I know he was dealing with an MCL sprain earlier in the year, and so is he just not 100%? That would be a little troubling if that were the case. I haven't like really studied his route running recently to see if he looks different when he's running. So that would be a little worrisome to me. But otherwise, the Bills corners aren't the same as the Texans corners. The Bills pass rush isn't the same as the Texans pass rush. It's going to be a completely different game. I think it'll be a lot more spread out in this game. It'll be harder for Kelce because they have guys that can guard him better than anybody the Texans had. So to me, it's kind of a one of one. Like this was a matchup that dictated that we play a certain way. Overall, I don't think the offense played terribly considering the quality of opponent and especially the quality of the defensive line. So, yeah, I would have liked to see us look better. We often do in the divisional round, but I'm not overly concerned about it.
Yeah. It did seem like the Texans had more answers, or at least more wrinkles than maybe I anticipated going into. I think I anticipated a pretty clean handling here, and it was definitely tense. Uh, but maybe going over to the defensive side a bit. I mean, we can go back to the offense if you want, but I'm curious on that side, given what you said about the run defense not being as good as you were hoping, is that a concern going forward, or are you also, more just relieved they made it out of this and thinking that the Bills game is a different animal and, we'll see what happens there?
Yeah, I do think it's kind of it'll be a different animal with the Bills, and we do know like last year the Bills were pretty effective running the ball against us. I don't know that I would have ever thought we were going to shut down their run game. Josh Allen is just too much of an added wild card, and honestly, just their base run game with James Cook is very good. So I kind of anticipated that we were going to give up like 100 yards to the Bills. Now, if we just get smoked, like that would be a problem. Like Derrick Henry has done to some people. Like, but if it's not like if they're not running for, yeah, I was gonna say the Steelers, and then I felt like that was unfair to just say the
Just rubbing
Steelers.
it in.
But like I do think that there will be ample opportunity to uh, get them in less advantageous situations, get them behind the sticks. It was a little troubling to me how well they were throwing the ball on third down earlier in the game, but now, like sitting back, it feels like a lot of early in the game was a setup to what we did at the end of the game, and strategically that worked really well. Like they just seemed to have no idea what was going on when we started actually blitzing at the end. And it was a lot of like, we're going to bring six or seven down, but then we might rush five out of it and we still get a free rusher. And then we'll rush five again from a different place and we get a free rusher. And then we come with all seven and they're not ready for that and we get a free rusher. Like it was interesting how there was a lot of variation in the blitzes themselves, but they just weren't ready because early on we were doing a lot of bringing people down and just bailing out. And I think they incorrectly anticipated we would do that on a couple huge plays and we didn't, and they really paid the price.
Yeah. It did seem like early they did have some nice conversions on passing plays, which maybe you were thinking that was like part of the kind of game script for the Chiefs, or at least, they were willing to give that up to throw them off later in the game. Um, I wondered, it felt to me like they must have been schemed up on for the Texans. They thought they could get people open in this way, and they did it, but maybe that was, who knows? Um,
And we did also have Jalen Watson just coming back from injury. This was his first game back. There were a couple snaps
Since
where he
like
looked a little
October, right?
rusty. Sorry.
When was that? Like he's been out since October, or is it September?
Yeah, I think he missed the last Bills game. He got hurt in the Niners game in week 8, I think. So he's been out for a while. So that'll be, I mean, that's huge for us having him in the Bills game, and that'll make a big difference on what Trent McDuffie can do. So, yeah, I'm not overly concerned. Like, you like that the Chiefs are still able to shut the door when they have to shut the door. And I think that was generally true offensively too, even though it didn't look that pretty. Like, in certain situations where it really felt like we had to do something, we were able to do it. The one like disappointing drive would be like after they, we were already up 23-12. They failed a fourth down with somewhere around 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I felt like we could have shut the door then and we went three and out. Like that was a
Yeah.
disappointing drive. But, we ended up getting the ball right back and then coming down with a long drive and kicking a field goal that I guess it was 20-12 at that point. And then we kicked the field goal to make it 23-12 and essentially ended the game.
Was that first drive that you're talking about there the one that started like very close? Did it start on the Texan side of the field, or was it near
Yeah,
midfield? I remember
it
it
was
was
on the
like three
Texans
and out.
side of the field. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I remember thinking like this is basically over, and then it wasn't. But
Yeah.
then it was. uh, yeah. What would you say is like the when were you most concerned in this game? I'll put it that way.
I don't know that I was ever concerned. It was intense, but like I didn't feel like we were going to lose. I would say like the most concerned I must have been was that third quarter drive when the Texans just ran it right down the field all the way into the end zone. That they could have tied it and they missed the extra point.
Yeah.
When we come out of halftime, we're up 13-6, and it's just like okay, we could really like open this game up because early on for as up and down as things were, like we were up 13-3, and then they just came down and kicked a field goal. It all felt okay in the first half. And then that initial drive in the third quarter was like, huh. Like I haven't really seen the only comparison I can remember was when the Panthers did a similar thing to us. They drove all the way down the field in a really long drive and came down and scored a touchdown. But then, after that, to start the second half, like two. I think in the Panthers game we were up 20-9 at halftime, and it felt pretty comfortable. And then they took up like over half the third quarter and scored a touchdown, and suddenly it was a game again.
Yeah.
But with the Texans too, like we had that drive, and then we ourselves took a long drive down the field and scored a touchdown ourselves. And in those situations, I really do like if you score a touchdown to put you up 7. I like going for 2 there. I wish Andy Reid had. Like, I just like, because, like, if you go up 7, you're fine. Teams are usually not going to try to go for 2. So, going up 8 isn't that much of an advantage to me. But you go up 9, and then suddenly you're,
That really changes a
2
lot of the
possession game.
Yeah. 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 I wonder. I mean, I bet they thought about it, right? I mean, I don't know. Who knows?
Andy Reid has done it before. I remember him doing it in a game against, I believe, the Raiders. But he tends to be a little more like gut feeling on some of these decisions. Obviously, it didn't matter. The Texans didn't score again. I mean, they did because we took an intentional safety, but they didn't actually score.
Yeah, were you at all like you were fine with the intentional safety at the end there? It wasn't like because I
I
remember like the
mean,
announcers were very calm about it, and I was thinking like I guess this could go south, but it went it went fine. So there was I
I
guess
think
in
if you,
hindsight it was
yeah, if you trust your punter to not do anything dumb, I would have said though, like, I wish they had a little more of a plan to waste some more time. Like,
yeah
it didn't feel worth, like, they wasted like 7 seconds, which
yeah
I guess it's a little hard to waste more than that in the NFL, but like, it's not like Matt Ariza seemed a little bit confused about what he was doing. Like, he just kind of like waited and I don't know. Uh, you know, I don't know. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. To me, the thing is the reason why you're doing that is you're trying to avoid a block kick, like or like a return touchdown. I don't know. You have a guy with like the biggest leg in the league. Like you could just have him just boom one, but I don't know. I honestly didn't really have strong feelings either way. I'm not sure it's what I would have done, but I don't really have a problem with it.
yeah. Um, all right. Well,
Like that's the kind
anything?
of thing I would have done if they took the snap with 7 or 8 seconds left instead of like 15 or whatever it
Yeah,
was.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Um, but it is hard to waste like 15 or whatever seconds on a
Right.
single play. Um, I mean, there's probably a way to do it. I don't know how to do it. Did you feel like there was any kind of, I mean, in some sense, there wasn't a turning point in this game because it was sort of pseudo, at least in your control the whole time. But if you had to pick a turning point, what would you say it was?
Mm, I would that awesome touchdown pass by Mahomes to Kelsey, like falling down because from
Yeah.
that point on, like the defense just ratcheted it up, and that was really the difference in the game. Like ultimately, the Chiefs' offense played about as well in both halves as it did. It's not like it improved greatly through the game. It was like the same, but the defense just went nuclear in the fourth quarter. Like they just had nothing. Like the Texans got some yardage to get basically like the our like wall was at the 40-yard line. Like once they got to about our 40, it was just like you're going nowhere from here. And it was pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, and that pass to Kelsey, by the way, like we should mention that a bit. Like I don't know, it reminded me of that Super Bowl against the Bucks when I mean that was a longer pass and it was incomplete, but it was like also in midair, falling. Was he falling forward in the Super Bowl? He was falling sideways,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but he was still facing forward. Like he was tripped up as he was like running diagonally, like, and then, but in that one he was like actually horizontal and airborne while he threw it. Whereas this one he was kind of like pivoting downward like that instead of like
Yeah.
coming on a plane. Like,
But I
but
have to imagine that that is not easy, right? As you're pivoting downward, you want to like throw a normal pass. There's like extra
that's
momentum taking the
insane. Yeah.
ball on that. Right.
I mean, I was 100% sure that that ball was either going into the dirt or to an underneath defender, like in front of where he was trying to throw the ball. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't believe, like, it looked like he was standing up straight when you see the trajectory of the ball. Like, that's insane. I don't know. Like, not only to have the strength to do that, but there is some, like, inherent understanding of physics, even if it's not like consciously that he's thinking about, to know that because you're coming like that, you have to put the ball higher than you would normally put it as you're coming down. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. Like, I don't know that that throw will be appropriately appreciated for how insane it was.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that was pretty cool. I think it's probably the kind of thing like I'm sure he's been in a similar kind of situation before, or at least like had to make a throw while, pivoting in some direction, and so got some sense for how that would work, right? But still, like that is just awesome. Um,
Oh, and one
uh,
more thing on the defense. So, according to ESPN, so I took this from Patrick Allen on Twitter, who works for Fansided and contributes to the Fansided site, the Arrowhead Addict. But he said, according to ESPN, the Chiefs pressured CJ Stroud at a rate of 56%, which is the second highest in an NFL playoff game since they started tracking this in 2009. So the defense like really was just all over Stroud in the second half.
yeah, 56%. Yeah, that's impressive. Um, well, what else from this game do you want to not you know is talking about here? I don't know what else is
Well,
worth
so
highlighting.
yeah, we hit playoff Travis Kelsey. We hit the defensive pressure, especially toward the end of the game. The only other thing I'd say is Trent McDuffie played a really good game. Um, he was kind of all over the field. He was making really difficult plays, like covering guys across the field on drag routes and still coming up to make the break up passes. Like, I mean, Trent McDuffie was very, very good in this one. And if Jalen Watson kind of ups his level a little bit to what he was playing like early in the year, like, I feel pretty good about the Chiefs going forward defensively.
I
The
think
Jalen
McDuffie had
Watson actually, sorry.
so good. I was thinking McDuffie had like two pass breakups in the first like four or five passes. I think it was like, well, okay, he's fine, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, he was all over. I thought he played such a good game. I was going to highlight him in the film review, but there was so much pass rush stuff to talk about that it would have been like another 3 hour film review. So I was like, I'm not doing that.
fair. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something and I cut you off there.
Just that Jalen Watson would have had an interception, except unfortunately Justin Reed ran into him. So like
Oh
the
yeah.
ball was being thrown to Justin Reed's guy, so Justin Reed did nothing wrong, but I mean he was making a play on the ball and a good play at that. But at the same time, Jalen Watson was dropping off of his man right into the path of the ball and would have certainly picked it off. But Justin Reed just plowed into him, and Watson almost caught it anyway. But that would have been nice for him.
That was the play where Reed got like knocked out, it looked like, right?
Yeah, he
He
got
was
hurt. Although he came back into the game, so I don't know what actually happened to him.
it was one of the ones where you go to commercial and you're like, oh God, I can't like I
Yeah,
need to like take a breath or something after that. That was those are the tough ones. And I feel like those do you find this too? Like the older I get, the more those disturb me, like those kinds of hits. And I just think maybe it's because I'm like older and more fragile myself or something like that. But like as a kid, I was just like, yep, that was a big hit, great. Or maybe not great, but like it didn't concern me. But now it's like, holy cow, just it almost makes you shiver or something. It's just like the amount of discomfort you imagine him being in. Something.
Yeah, I mean the head stuff especially like just because I think as you get older, at least as I get older, I think more of like the long-term impact. Like it bothers me a little less when someone has an injury that you're just like they're going to be okay from this or like I feel pretty not that I mean all of these injuries have some lasting impact. The number of football players who say they can't they walk differently from how they used to before and all that stuff. So I don't mean that they don't have lasting impact, but when you tear an ACL and then you're able to come back from that and be as explosive as you were before, it it impacts me less than when someone has their head nailed so hard that you're just like, gosh, I hope, in your 50s we aren't seeing like effects of this happen to your life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are the scary ones, definitely. I mean, the knees going backwards don't look fun either. They definitely don't
No,
look fun.
yeah.
But it's really the head ones that I think that get me the most. Um, but yeah, it was great to see that he was like up on the sideline when they came back from commercial. So, um, what else from this one? Or I mean, we gotta take a break in a minute, but anything else that we should not miss here?
I maybe we can go to break just because I want to talk about the commentary about officiating, and I feel like it'll take me longer than we have. So why don't we go to
Yeah.
break and then we can discuss it?
Okay, come back for would you call it a rant?
It might get ranty. I'll be honest. It might.
All right. Well, a rant perhaps when we come back.
All right.
Well, we're back, and if you've been waiting on tenterhooks as I have for this rant, you've only had to wait a couple seconds. I had to wait like 10-ish minutes here. Uh, so, are you ready for this?
Yeah, I just don't want to sound like a crazy person, so I'm trying to keep my thoughts organized. So I think there are three different things that I want to talk about here. One about like what actually happened on the field. Two, the discourse surrounding the officials. And then three, the actual facts about what has been happening throughout the time that the Chiefs have been under Patrick Mahomes. Like, so I've brought some things to discuss. So let's start with like what actually happened on the field. So materially, we're talking about two penalties that people did not like, and then one flop from Patrick Mahomes that didn't result in a penalty. So not really anything to complain about that from a penalty standpoint, but we'll get to that. Well, let's take things one at a time. So the first penalty was a roughing the passer penalty that occurred when the Chiefs and Texans were tied at 3, and the Chiefs had 3rd and 8 at their own 33-yard line. So this penalty got the Chiefs to the 48-yard line. It extended a drive. So 100% the penalty extended a drive. So if your point is they would have punted, yes. It did not gift them points. They still had to go from the 43-yard line, 48-yard line. But the penalty was Will Anderson Jr. after Mahomes threw the pass, hit Mahomes high, and it looks like his hands hit him somewhere around the shoulders, and his face mask made contact with Patrick Mahomes' face mask. I think the person on ESPN argued that it wasn't forcible contact. So Walt Anderson Jr., coming after this, when he was kind of explaining it, said that he would have still called this a penalty. And so I have a couple thoughts on it. I am perfectly fine if people would say that this was not a penalty. I think that's a perfectly reasonable take to have because the face masks made very light contact with each other.
That's
I'm
not
less.
possible.
Yeah, exactly. They would just say it's not forcible, would be the argument that it's not a penalty. However,
That must be a term of art, right? Like you don't, forcible is not a
It's subjective,
How
right?
frequently
The
you like
referee
this
might
sort
have
of
thought it was subjective, was forcible. Walt Anderson Jr., the VP of whatever in the officiating, thought it was subject or thought it was forcible. He defended the call. So, but if someone wanted to argue that wasn't forcible, like whatever, I'm less forgiving for the people that don't want a flag thrown on that play because, like, you're just not paying attention to what the officials are doing in the NFL. Like, the officials are being told to protect the quarterback. And if anything happens that looks like contact to the head or neck, they're going to throw the flag. The official that threw the flag was standing behind Patrick Mahomes. He sees a defender clearly go high, which is the first thing that I would say is, if you're mad at anyone, you should be mad at Will Anderson Jr. for it being 2024 and you're going high on a quarterback. Why?
125.
Sorry, it's 2025. Like, why are you going high on a quarterback? You know that anything that is somewhat subjective, if when in doubt, the officials are coached to throw the flag, and they will. Like, I think an official would throw a flag 10 times out of 10 on that play. It looked pretty bad from behind if you watch the replay. Like, Mahomes was hitting the shoulders and his head snapped back. Like, it looked really bad from the official's perspective, and their heads did touch. Like, the helmet hit the helmet. Why in 2025 are you in a position as a defender that your helmet is hitting the helmet of a quarterback? You're stupid if you're doing that in this day and age when you know what we're doing as an NFL community. You know how the calls are being made. Like, you're an idiot if you're hitting a quarterback high, and you're going to take a risk of a flag being thrown no matter what you do. The only time for me when a pass rusher hits a quarterback in the head where I have any sympathy for them in the current rules was when they're trying to knock a pass down and their hand hits the head of the quarterback. Like, that stinks. Like, what are you going to do? But you know not to hit him high. It's not, Mahomes was not ducking on this play. It was after the ball was thrown anyway. It wasn't a necessary hit. Like, that to me is just on you as a defender. Like, you know what's happening. Anyway, so that's play one. Play
I do wonder
two.
why the like the open hand hit to the head counts. Like, can't they just like they often call that, right? But it does
Right.
one does wonder why they include that as a penalizable, forcible hit to the head, as it were. Because
Yeah, especially when your
flattening a helmet's
intent is
probably
like,
hurting your hand more.
it's fair. But it's instructive then as to, like, if that's being called, if your face mask hits his face mask, it's probably going to be called. Like, I don't know. I just think if you're making contact above at the collarbone or above, like, you're an idiot. Well, I don't know why you're doing that today. You're going to get flagged because if they see something that looks like something, they're going to call it. Case in point, the Lions defender against I'm trying to remember which side was which now. I think was it in the Lions Commanders game? There was a face mask call where they clearly it was a Commanders defender that he grabbed the shoulder pad and twisted him around, and they called a face mask because if something looks like something, they're going to call it. They're looking at this in real time. And I'm not saying don't grab someone's shoulder pad. I'm just using it as an instructive point that if you do something that looks kind of like you're hitting their head, they're going to throw a flag. They don't have the slow motion replay that you have sitting on your TV at home. So that's what they're going to do. And to the point of replay assist, they are specifically instructed that they cannot use replay assist to determine whether something was forcible contact. So once they saw that the helmet's hit, replay assist is out of the question. They're not going to use it. It has to be clear and obvious. So I don't know. I think that complaint is kind of like, is it annoying if you're a Texans fan or if you want the Chiefs to lose? Sure. But like I said, the person I would be most annoyed at is the defender that's hitting somebody high in 2025. You know what's coming with that. Like, come on. The second play, I feel like you can give the defender a lot more leeway here. On the second play, Mahomes is running and he slides late. And if your argument is that you want to eliminate the late slide, fine. I feel like that's a reasonable argument. If your argument is that the referee shouldn't call it, it's the letter of the law. It's very clear in the NFL rulebook. I really encourage people to read the NFL rulebook. A lot of these rules are very clearly written out, actually. It's a nice document. It's very clearly stated that the leading with the crown of your helmet as a defender In that case, the position of the offensive player, whether they're ducking or whether they're leading with their head, is not taken into account. You cannot lead with the crown of your helmet and hit them in the head. You can't do it. And they did it. Like, that is what happened. And they made the point of, like, well, the two Texans players' helmets hit each other. Yeah, they did. But Mahomes was hit first by the first Texan player. And honestly, they're lucky. Well, we're lucky as Chiefs fans that the second Texans player's helmet hit the first one, because otherwise that entire blow was coming to Mahomes. Like, the second Texans player's helmet hitting the first one is what prevented Mahomes from probably being knocked out on that play. Like, that it's not that the two guys just rammed into each other. He started hitting Mahomes and another guy hit him. And fortunately for everybody, that happened and prevented Mahomes from getting knocked out of that game. Well, maybe not fortunately for the Texans, but I hope they're not rooting for a Mahomes injury. So again, and they're going to call that 10 times out of 10. Like, people need to start learning to separate what you think football is and what you want football to be and what you think the spirit of football is with what is written in the rule book. Like, I will hear for days the argument of, like, it shouldn't be this way. Sure, but it is. So don't say the ref's making a bad call. The ref's making a good call. This is what he's being taught. Or she's being taught, you know, like that it's not a bad call. You can just say, like, I wish they didn't have the rules like that. That's a separate discussion, but that's not what we're talking about here. And for the third play, the Mahomes flop, I don't like the fact that he flopped. I agree with everyone that says he was going to the sideline. He was trying to slow down and get hit. He took a hit and he flopped. If you think that was bad, he shouldn't be done, I'm right there with you. I hope he never does it again. Not proud of that moment to see Patrick Mahomes do that. At the same time, no flag was thrown. So those that are complaining about the officiating, I don't really understand why you're bringing that play up. If you're bringing that up to criticize Patrick Mahomes, 100% fair game. I will be critical of him. I don't like that he did that. I hate it when other quarterbacks do it. I hate that he did it. I hope he never does it again. So, like, that I'm perfectly fine with, but I just don't see it as I don't understand it as a vehicle to complain about the officiating. They didn't throw a flag on that play. So,
Yeah.
What's the complaint?
Well, I have to say these were all compelling points. Was that a rant? I think it was, you might say, a forcible soliloquy. Borderline rant, yes. But I think that was, rant might have the connotation of unjustified or unhinged. I don't think that was unhinged. So very compelling points. I think I have nothing to complain about in any of your argumentation here.
I do. So the second part of this might get to a rant, though.
Okay. Oh, well, good. Let's keep going.
So that was my discussion of the penalties. Now I want to talk about the discourse, because this is where I am going to feel like a talk show host a little bit. I think I am not talking about people who are fans on Twitter or wherever that are just normal people that say that everything's rigged. Like, we've brought this up before. I'm not talking to you people. You know, it's a free country. You can have whatever opinion you want. You can say it on Twitter as much as you want. I don't care. I have a problem with the people that are in sports media and now apparently on sports teams that are saying stuff like this because it's disingenuous. I don't believe that you believe it, and you're just farming for engagement. And I hate it. I hate it from politicians. For some reason, this is becoming more and more acceptable in our culture. I hate it from news media, where you feel like people are saying things that they don't actually believe in order to rile people up. And it's come into sports media too. And now it's surrounding the officials discussion. When people like Mark Schlereth, who's like an actual NFL personality on Fox, a former offensive lineman, is talking about how things are rigged for the Chiefs. He's saying things like all three phases of the game: offense, defense, referees. He's like, he is directly engaging people and specifically saying that the referees favor the Chiefs. He's either a complete idiot, which I don't accept, I think he knows, like the rest of he knows that this isn't the case. He's just farming for engagement. And I like to me that's one of the lowest types of people to try to convince people of something that you know is not true because it helps you professionally or it helps you gain more of a following. Like that's really disappointing. And I'm surprised at how many times things like that are like we know that the Skip Baylesses of the world do that, right? And that's the reason why a lot of people don't like him because we don't think he believes. And to be fair, I think it's the same thing about people like Stephen A. Smith. Like they say things that I don't actually believe that they believe, and when they start doing that, like I just don't care about what you think. Like I'm not gonna watch. I don't that is my line. I don't care about people being angry. I don't care about people debating and yelling and all that. To me, it's like, is it in good faith? Do you actually believe what you're saying? And I think we're getting to the point now where a lot of people are just saying this because they know it gets engagement. And now it's spread to the actual Houston Texans players. So I have some quotes for you from Texans players and their head coach from after the game was played. So let's start with D'Amico Ryans when he was asked to discuss officiating. He very smartly kind of sidestepped the question and said something a little more broadly so that I think to avoid a fine. He said, when asked about the calls, he said, we knew going into this game that it was going to be us versus everybody. So, artfully done. But to me, very disappointing. Will Anderson Jr., the guy who, in my opinion, is the most to blame of anybody for a flag being thrown. He's the one who hit Mahomes high and for the first roughing the passer penalty. We knew it was going to be us versus the refs going into this game. CJ Stroud, it's kind of one of those things where you know what's up before you even walk in their arena. And then another quote later in the same paragraph. But no, it's the kind of thing where it's us against the world when you're playing in these type of environments and games. Then Joe Mixon. Everybody knows how it's playing up here. You can never leave it to the ref's hands, but the whole world sees, man, like what it is, bro. Like, that's so disappointing to me that players are going to make accusations that I know that they don't believe. I mean, if you're playing football and you think the game is rigged, like, what are you, stupid? Why are you playing? Like, if you think that it's all like, and to those people watching, why are you watching? Like, if you think it's rigged and you know who's going to win, turn the game off. Like, wow, you're willing to waste a lot of your time for nothing. And to players, like, not only is it that, like, it's disingenuous and I don't think you believe it, if you're starting to convince yourself of that, like, what happened to the concept of people being mentally tough? Like, you're supposed to be, like, building a team with a toughness and a culture that you can go out and believe you can win every game. You've lost from the beginning if you're talking before the game about how the refs are going to be against you. Like, I can't believe it. Like, this is completely contrary to everything we learn about how you build an NFL mentality. If a bunch of players just saying, like, oh, yeah, we knew the refs were going to be against us. The game is rigged. Well, don't play. You should have stayed at home.
Or don't do the thing that you did, right? Like if you know that going in or
Yes.
think that going in, why play that way then? That is clearly like I think it's clearly just said in hindsight because they want to, have as a scapegoat for why they lost, right? Or why they were penalized on that play, right? I mean, it does not add up if you knew that going in, why you would have played that way or why you would
That's a
have hit him
great
high.
point. In a vacuum, hitting a quarterback high is stupid. If you think the refs are rigged against you and going to protect the quarterback, I mean, I can't even, I don't have a word right now for how stupid that would be then to hit someone high. Like, it makes no sense. What are you doing? And I really hope, that the NFL, like the NBA, has rules about criticizing officials because it can affect the integrity of the game if you're trying to affect officials by creating a narrative. Man, I hope they all get appropriately fined because that's really, really disappointing coming from professional football players. And I just don't believe they believe it. Just like a lot of like you guys play the game all the time. Like, I don't think you would be doing this if you thought that the game's now. It's one thing if you think the rules have become soft. Fine. Like, I get that. But your quarterback is getting the same soft protections as every other quarterback. And it's just that Chris Jones isn't stupid enough to come hit him in the shoulder pads and have their helmets hit. That's the only difference in the game, you know. We sacked C.J. Stroud 8 times. You know what? No dumbass hit him in the head. That's the difference. Like, I can't believe the complaints. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it does. It's very transparently, I think, just sort of justifying it in hindsight. Trying to justify it in hindsight. So I sympathize. I do think that was like rant material, but it was not unhinged rant material. It was very coherent and again very compelling, but perhaps I'm biased.
And so then finally, a little more of a mellow discussion. Just, I have some statistics that some good people have put out there on the internet to kind of counteract the narrative that, like, so there are a couple of things. First, the narrative came out that the Chiefs get all the calls, you know, all the time, and they have throughout Patrick Mahomes. And a lot of people then kind of went and showed statistics of like relative net penalty yards in the Chiefs and showed that that's actually not the case. So then the argument became, well, they get all the high leverage calls. And so some people actually went and dug down into some specific stats to show why that probably is not the case. So I have some of those statistics to try to help people parse through this. First is by an AP sports writer named Josh Dubow, who does really good work. I like following him because he just has a lot of stats in general he tweets out during games. So first he said, since 2020, the Chiefs have the 8th worst penalty yard differential in the regular season and playoffs combined. They've been penalized for 381 more yards than their opponents in that span. Then he goes back to 2018. Since Patrick Mahomes became the starting quarterback for the Chiefs in 2018, Kansas City has been penalized for 693 more yards than their opponents, playoffs included. That is the 4th worst penalty yard differential in that span. Then when asked to do things more in high leverage situation, the Chiefs have the 7th worst penalty yard differential since 2018 in the 4th quarter and overtime of games decided by 1 score. Then he went into the number of first downs gained by penalty on 3rd or 4th down since 2018. The Chiefs have 84. Chiefs opponents have 104. So in every metric, it shows that the Chiefs actually do worse than teams that they play against, even in high leverage situations when determining penalties that are aiding teams, especially getting you things like first downs. So then Scott Kazimir wrote an article about this as well, and there are just a couple quotes that I wanted to read from his. Mahomes has drawn a roughing the passer penalty 31 times in his career. That's 0.237 calls per career game, which ranks 15th amongst quarterbacks since 2009. That's directly behind Jimmy Garoppolo and well behind his backup Carson Wentz, who ranks number 4. Mahomes has a career-high 6 roughing the passer penalties in 2024, but he's never led the league in that statistics. Josh Allen has twice led the league in 2020 with 11 and 2023 with 7, and he ranks number 3 with 0.311 such calls per game in his career. Allen also gets 31.6% of his roughing penalties on 3rd down, which is higher than Mahomes, who's at 29%. Quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees had just over 40% of their roughing calls come on 3rd down, so Mahomes ranks relatively low there too on high leverage calls to extend drives. Even in games decided by 1 score, the Chiefs rank 30th in penalty yardage differential per game. That's not good. That's the 3rd worst mark in the league. So there are not data to support these claims. And it's unfortunate when you're in a position where you're in high leverage situations and you tend to come through a lot, you're naturally going to have people that are rooting for you to fail. And we talked about this in the context of the Patriots a couple episodes ago, and I said that I was particularly disappointed in Patriots fans that follow this narrative because they know what it's like. And again, like Twitter users and people, like, I'm not talking to you. Like, you can have whatever view you want. I don't care. But when it comes to people that actually have platforms that know better and that are just advancing narratives in order to get engagement, that's really disappointing to me. Extremely disappointing.
Yeah. I well, I share that disappointment. I think that's unfortunately how the media or so much of social media works nowadays. Uh, because you need to make the more, of course, the more engaging things are the more sensational things, right? And then they get traction regardless of whether they ought to get traction, and then your worst nightmares come true because those are the more sensational things. Whether these are our worst nightmares or not, we can put that aside. But these are, yeah, I sympathize with you. Uh, Chiefs fans, I think, are on the wrong end of a false narrative here. And I mean, on the other hand, they can like you win the Super Bowls a lot, so like you know, but if this is yeah, so if you have to put up with this when you win Super Bowls, like it's probably worth it, right? Like
Oh
I would
yeah,
do that, I would take that
yeah.
trade.
I'll keep that. If we keep winning, I'm fine. I don't mind.
Um, but yeah, I sympathize. And that
To
was
me, I think the thing that I don't know that I would have addressed this whatsoever if not for the Texans players bringing this stuff up. Like, I
yeah,
just couldn't believe it. I could not
yeah,
believe that.
yep. That was, I mean, just being objective about it, that was like one of the most coherent rants I think I've heard in quite a while. So, well packaged, I will say. Um, let's see what kind of engagement that gets. I'm curious whether people will be in agreement or not. Good. Well, yeah, it's a good thing we waited till after the break to cover that. Anything else you did that you would like to say about this game or about this narrative? The Chiefs getting all the calls.
No, just that I'm sure we'll have more high leverage games and we will have more calls go our way. People just
Yeah,
forget the ones that don't, that's
yeah,
how it goes.
yeah. I mean, I forget the games where the Steelers looked worse. Well, not always. Sometimes those stick out in your memory, but you tend to remember the good plays, right? The plays that you like to think about, and so you tend to remember the plays that are important to you. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for example, on the drive that had the first Mahomes roughing the passer call, like one of the reasons we were in 3rd and 8 is because there was a, a bogus holding call on Trey Smith that was called when he was actually pulled down by the defender. And so that started
Oh yeah,
everything. There was a bad call against us, and then there was a questionable call. Like some would say bad call, and that's fine. You can think it's a bad call. Like I said, I don't have a problem with the people if they're saying it wasn't forcible contact on the first one. But just know that if you hit a quarterback high and the referee's standing behind them, like they always are positioned, the umpire back there, they're going to call that penalty. Like that's
yeah,
just what they're going to do. And the part of it to me too is just like, that it's like the definition of insanity, right? Like we know they do. They do this all the time. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's soft. Yeah, but we know, right? Like at some point you should adjust your behavior knowing what officials do. And remember, this is the team that knocked Trevor Lawrence out on like a hit to the head during a slide. So I'm sure they had extra attention on them too.
well, I enjoyed that. Thank you. Should we move on to was it Commanders Lions that was next?
Oh man, that was a great game. Like it
Yeah,
was.
I think you anticipated this one better than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought I didn't think that the Commanders would have enough, and I'm disappointed that I didn't because I've been riding the whole like, are we sure we trust Jared Goff train all year, and then I was like, my only regret after the game was like, man, I wish I had picked the Commanders. But I really did think the Lions were going to win this game. I just thought that the Commanders would really be game, and I think that's what it was. That I think the Lions were a little better. It was just that Jared Goff was Jared Goff. He turned the ball over too many times. Like that line, they couldn't stop Jahmyr Gibbs. They couldn't stop Williams. They just got a couple picks because Jared Goff made some bad plays. And like that is why when I say things like we know who Jared Goff is, it's like it's hard to win a Super Bowl. And ultimately, like as Lamar Jackson will tell you when we talk about that game, like a couple mistakes can tank your entire chance. Like, and you got to be better than that. And Jared Goff wasn't.
So would you put this more on Goff than on the Lions defense? It felt to me like the Lions defense was just sort of they didn't have answers here. And they've been really injured this year. There's a lot of been made about that, but like my coming out of this, I was more blaming the defense than I mean Goff was not good, but they still put up what 31.
Yeah.
That's
No, I mean, I do think the defense was ultimately the problem, but I think the Lions were as much of a problem for the Commanders' defense as vice versa. So I still think they would have won that game if not for Goff's mistakes. That's why I kind of put it on Goff. I will say the one thing I'll say, especially because Aaron Glenn is going to be a coaching candidate, is that like they kept blitzing and the Commanders kept dicing it up with RPOs, and I just felt like at some point you've got to dial down the aggressiveness. Like you have to. They didn't adjust. They kind of stuck to their guns, and they weren't. I think they thought maybe they could rattle Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden Daniels, this is quite a rookie season. We'll see. We'll talk in the off season as we always do about teams adjusting and the second year drop off. But he's impressive.
yeah. I mean, they made a lot of the broadcast about how calm he looked during the game, just sort of sitting there casually. Like, yeah, we're up 10 on the number one seed in their house. Yeah, um, yeah. You mentioned Terry McLaurin too being a factor in this one, and he took that short screen to the house like 60 some yards. Um, yeah, I mean, the Lions defense did not have answers, and I think they, I mean, I guess you can still blame, like, with that in mind, Goff was the difference, right? Goff's perform, and then even at the end of the game, am I remember? Maybe I'm blending this with a different game. I think even at the end of the game, when they were trying to, score, maybe I'm thinking of it. He was just taking everything underneath. Is that right? I remember. I think it was a lot of short pass. Like, you would have thought you need to go deep, right? And it was a bunch of underneath stuff at the end. Goff really, maybe he was just sort of scared from earlier in the game when he had those picks, but I don't know. I think, good.
Well, and the thing too is like the picks were not like, so we'll talk about Lamar Jackson's pick in a little bit, but like I view that interception as very like Goff, like both of those picks were very clearly squarely on him. Like it wasn't like being out schemed. It wasn't like one, he just missed, he overthrew someone in zone, which you just cannot do. And the other one was just a ball placement issue on a post route. Like he just put it in a place where the defender was able to undercut it, and he did. But to me, given that, like, that's not crazy to me because, like, that is my conception of Jared Goff as someone who I think I heard it, I think Steven Ruiz called him like an elite point and shoot quarterback. Like, he's very much like the quarterback that a Kyle Shanahan would want. He's like the kind of guy who is like, if you scheme a guy open, he'll hit him. But like once things get complicated, like it's a different game. And so like that wasn't like completely out of my conception. To me, the like ultimate sin by the Lions offense was, and I'm not someone who normally criticizes play calling because I think it's very easy to do and we don't know, if plays work, we say they're good. If they don't work, we say they're bad. And that's exceptionally true for trick plays. So I'm usually, Andy Reid, he gets criticized for being too cute in the red zone. And then when it works, they're like, he's a genius. I stay away from criticizing trick plays. But the Jamison Williams pass that got intercepted, to me, is unconscionable because you already have a turnover problem today. You know, you're down, they're down 38-28, and this is still a winnable game. There's 12-13 to go in the fourth quarter, and they're near midfield. They're down 10. And you just get too, like, and the reason why I think it's a bad play, I don't think just in general having a wide receiver pass, we know who Jamison Williams is. Like, the only person that is a wide receiver that I would less trust to throw it away if the guy isn't open is probably George Pickens. Um, Maybe Deontay Johnson. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have zero faith. I have zero faith that Jamison Williams is going to be like, oh, you know what? It's not there. Let me throw it away. And that's absolutely necessary when you're having a wide receiver pass. This is an extremely high leverage game. You're down 10. You need to score. I just can't understand calling that play. I feel like I would have criticized it. Like, because you're telling the receiver there, if he's wide open, you throw it. If he's not open, if there's any defender in the area, you throw it away. And Jameson Williams isn't going to do that. He literally got caught for gambling on the team facility. Like, we've seen an example of poor impulse control. Like,
Speaking of, did you see his touchdown celebration?
yeah, that was earlier in that game.
Yeah.
Right when it happened, I was just like, what? Like, of course you're going to get fined for that. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I can't believe they didn't
Yeah.
throw a flag, honestly.
Yeah, I couldn't either. I mean, Antonio Brown should have been mad that they didn't throw a flag for that
Yeah,
one.
he should have. He should have been really mad.
Um,
Tyreek Hill was
yeah, and
flagged for
then
twerking in a preseason game.
yeah. Um, anyway, yeah. And then later in that same game to have him do yeah. Well,
That's just not that. And I understand the thought process, right? Like, he had scored on an end around. You feel like they're going to come up on him, and but like the most important part of that play, well, I guess the defensive attention may be the most important, but the second most important part is having a guy who you trust that if he's not there, isn't going to throw the pass because he's not a quarterback. So don't throw a pass into any kind of coverage. Like, and I mean any kind of coverage. He better be so open that I could hit him. Like, that's who you're looking at. Like, and of course, he didn't have the judgment to make that play, and that ultimately was the final nail in the coffin for the Lions.
yeah. Well, disappointing for Lions fans. You know, you feel bad for them, but it's hard to feel that bad because it's not like Washington has always, has been here a lot recently. So I think, both teams are ones you can feel good about winning that game.
Yeah.
Um, should we go on to
Rams, Eagles.
Eagles, Rams? Yeah,
I
that was a
was,
fun one.
yeah, that was a very fun one. Honestly, it like the relative performances of the team were kind of how I was expecting it to go, but they scored a lot more points than I thought they would.
Mhm.
I thought this was going to be like a knockdown, drag out, like in the teens.
I mean, it
So
was probably you can blame the snow for that, and then just like Barkley getting loose a few times.
yeah, the leaky run defense.
Yeah,
Even Jalen Hurts had a 44-yard touchdown run. Like, I thought they'd score rushing touchdowns, but they would be long drives. Like, the explosive run plays I was not expecting.
yeah. I mean, I think the snow was kind of a wild card there that it made it, you know, exacerbated mistakes. If you're slightly out of position, then you're very out of position when it's snowing that much. But was this the game where there was a really cool one of the games this weekend? I think it was this one. One of the Rams, maybe the Rams' first touchdown, or yeah, it was like Stafford rolled out and they had the back end to block, and then the back like snuck out really late, and it was across the pass into the middle, and the back took it into the end zone. Was that this one? There
Yeah,
was
I know what.
whatever. It was a very cool play design. I remember thinking like that's what I think it
I,
fit our narrative going in because we were thinking Sean McVay, he would scheme up some cool stuff, whereas um, uh,
I think
if the Eagles were
I,
going to win, it was just because they had better players, basically.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, well, yeah, I think that was. God, I cannot remember where that play happened that you're talking about. It's like burned into my
Maybe
mind, and
I'm
I can't. I don't
Yeah,
think
maybe
it
this
was.
it could even not be this game, but I thought that was this one where when I was it confirmed at least when I was thinking about it before this podcast that yeah, that was McVay scheming things up nicely. But maybe it wasn't even McVay, right? Like maybe it was a totally different coach on a totally different team. Um, but anyway, yeah, it did feel to me like that game was one where, as you had said going in, that it was going to be the Eagles were probably going to win just because they had better players, right? And uh, it did feel like that's what happened. I mean, the Rams had their chances though, right? It wasn't
Yeah.
a foregone conclusion. But
Well, and really, like, I feel like the Rams kind of withstood a lot more than I thought they would through the course of the game. And then I really feel like when Jalen Hurts took that safety, which I could not understand, like, that was like he had a defender come right down the middle, and I just feel like you've got to find a receiver whose head you can throw that ball over, like. And I don't know. I didn't see the all 22. Maybe it was more complicated than I thought, but it just felt like you're in the end zone. Like that was a tough sack to take. But when they're in that position, then the Rams kind of were. It felt like they were ready to try to take a little bit of control of this game, and then they had two straight drives where they lost fumbles,
yeah,
and I feel
yeah.
like
And
that
then
completely
they
changed the
didn't get
outlook.
into the. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that changed the outlook entirely. Like when they got that safety, I was like, oh boy, like this might go
Yeah,
differently from what I thought.
we got to take a break here in a couple seconds, but I felt like the Rams didn't get in. Like they didn't try to move it with the passing game until too late. And if they had tried that a bit earlier in the snow, you know, they could have they could have done this, I think, but they didn't.
All right,
All
so
right,
should we take a
so
break?
yeah, sounds good.
And we're back. So we got to talk Ravens Bills. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel like I've led some of the analysis on the previous games. What was your conception of how this game went?
I Well, I can let me first give you the weird thing, which is that I wanted the Ravens to win it. Like I went in not think knowing who I wanted to win, but like while I was watching, I was like, you know what? Ravens deserve this. Like Lamar deserves this. And then no, it didn't happen. So of course uh, I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed it objectively. It was a fun game, but it felt to me like were it not for the turnovers, the Ravens were the better team in this. And I feel like if I were the Chiefs watching this game, I would be sort of pleased with how that went because you play this game like 10 times. I think the Ravens win more of them than the Bills win. Um, and it was the kind of game where it's like ah man that really sucks like Mark Andrews must be having a bad week
Oh,
this
I can't
week.
even imagine.
Man, like you could almost not like on that last play the 2 point attempt where he dropped it. I think there was the angle was such that you could almost not tell whether he caught it or not because there was like someone standing in the way, but then you could see the ball come out on the other side. I was like, wow, like he must have he like at the time I said like I wonder if he had money on the Bills or something like that. Like 'cause he
Well,
like
but like,
really
wasn't that a weird looking drop though? Actually, like I'm just to be clear, after my whole rant, I'm not actually saying that he had money in the Bills. I'm not conspiracy theorizing here, but
no me
I,
neither.
I mentioned to my wife in the moment, like that was a weird drop because usually when you see like it's like outside the frame of the body or like they let it through their hands and it hits their body, but he caught it with his hands in the frame of his body. I was not expecting a double clutch like a bobble.
Yeah,
That was so
yeah.
weird. Like the ball must have been really slippery or hard or but it was so unusual. I can't think of one instance where I've seen a drop like that where it was a ball right into his body. He squeezed it with his hands and then he bobbled. Like it didn't look like it's not like he got a finger on it and was trying to corral it. Like he had it and then he
No,
double
it's like he was
clutched it. And
overthinking
I
it or
don't know.
something.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
very weird. You see that sometimes like outside when someone, but that was odd. I had never, I mean, that's when you're just like, this is just not this man's day. Like, I don't know what to like, good Lord. Like that, this is,
Yeah.
I'm sure in some circles, this will be known as the Mark Andrews game. Like that sticks.
Right. Yeah, in Raven circles, for example. Yeah, that it does. And then what I was trying to remember in the first game against the Chiefs this year, was that a 2-point conversion attempt when Likely's toe was out of bounds or back of his
No, it
foot was
was
out of
a
bounds, or was that a
touchdown. We
touchdown?
were up 27-20. It was a touchdown attempt. Yeah.
Yeah. But in some ways felt fairly similar. Like Lamar put the ball exactly where it needed to be, and tight end let him down. Um, but yeah, I think that's got to be frustrating for them as a whole, but Lamar in particular. And, yeah, sooner or later he's gonna break through, I think. But this feels kind of
I
like I think someone said this on Twitter. It feels kind of like Manning in 2006 or something after losing to the Patriots in the divisional round. It's like banging your head against the wall, and you keep getting to this place no matter how much you work at it. Um, yeah, it's tough.
I feel like this was a perfect game for Lamar discourse because people on either side have a lot of fodder,
Yeah,
Because, like,
true.
on one hand, like, it is true that Lamar Jackson made mistakes that he doesn't make in the regular season. At least he didn't this year. Um, the interception, which I think was a complicated play, like, it wasn't. He did have Matt Milano blitzing. I think Tony Romo might have given that a little more credit than it deserved as far as like how much that affected his throw. But clearly,
Mhm.
he and Bateman were just not on the same page about the break, right? He had Bateman coming flat and he threw it more vertically. There was a safety over the top, so I don't. I mean, I feel like Lamar was kind of wrong there, even though it was
Yeah.
like a combined misread. Like, I don't know why you'd throw that vertically with the safety over the top. In any
Mhm.
case, like it's not as simple as like Jared Goff just missing the throw, to me at least. And then the fumble, he was like trying to do a lot and switch the ball hands, and those are things that he doesn't do. Like he's very good at. This year, he's been incredible at avoiding turnovers. So I
And
can
you can
see
blame,
that.
I don't know, you could blame the center. It was a high snap, right? And he had to corral that snap. Uh, but then he did corral it, I guess, right? Was he
Right.
switching hands when he fumbled? If that's what you're.
Yeah, at least that I think so because I can't think of any other reason why he dropped the ball. Like I think he was trying to switch hands, but yeah, he had corralled it, and I know that's a high adrenaline play all of a sudden when the snap is high and all that. But like he does that kind of stuff all the time. Like I don't think he can't do that. He just didn't in that moment. So
Yeah.
and ultimately, like in addition to the Andrews had a drop and a fumble and another drop at the 2 point
Yeah.
conversion. Like in addition to those mistakes, like those Lamar mistakes, like really did make a difference. They went down 21-10, and that's the difference in that game. So like you have that side of it, and Lamar like really came through in the second half. Like he played as
Yeah.
well in the playoffs as I've ever seen him play in that game. He was really good in the second half, and yes, Derrick Henry was too,
I
and
mean,
that
they
helps.
they were really good. And they came out like they got it sorted out, I think, at halftime, whatever they needed to, and they were definitely the better team after halftime. But
And the one thing, and again, I really want to stress that I am typically not someone that complains about play calling, but one of the things I could not understand was when they had the ball, and I'm trying to remember exact game situation here. I believe they scored a touchdown to make it 21-19, and they decided to go for two.
yeah, yeah,
And in that moment, they had literally bullied the Bills down the field running the ball. Like
mhm,
they just, and then they went, not only did they throw on the 2 point conversion, which fine, they motioned to empty. So there was like no threat of run except a quarterback draw. Like Derrick Henry had been like everything on that drive. Honestly, like as someone who I didn't really care who won the game, except for my brother-in-law's a Bills fan, and I wish well for him. And I had picked the Bills, so I wanted to be right. So those were the only two reasons I was rooting for the Bills. Like I didn't really, really care on the deep level, and I felt like playing either of the teams was going to be very hard. So I don't know that I felt very good about either way. But as someone who wanted the Bills to win, I was like, please don't run this with Derrick Henry. Please
yeah,
don't do it. When they motioned to empty, I was like, oh man, they might stop him here. And they did.
yeah.
I
I
don't
mean, it
really
was kind of
understand
like
that
that
one.
the Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl where it's like they could hand it off to Marshawn Lynch, or they could throw a pick, and they threw the pick, right? Like, um, yeah, like everyone probably is thinking like the run is the safe and good bet here, but no.
And the Bills couldn't have felt good about their chance to stop. I mean, they were just getting pushed off the ball the whole drive.
Yeah,
So I don't know. To me, like it just leaves Lamar in the playoffs as an incomplete. Like those first two, like this was definitely the best I have felt about his playoff prospect in his career. Like I felt a lot worse for him after the AFC Championship game last year. Like I felt like some of the mistakes weren't his, but like he actually had some really high leverage times. Like that last drive was great.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I hope he should be feeling good about himself. Like he showed something in the playoffs that I don't think he'd showed before, but he also made mistakes like he has in the past. So it's an incomplete to me.
yeah. It is. I mean, am I wrong to think that the team that you would have wanted to win as a Chiefs fan was the Bills? Well, like, given the way that the game played out, it looked like it seemed to me that the Ravens were the better team, and maybe I'm just. I mean, maybe I'm not taking the first half well enough into account in that case, like without those turnovers, the Ravens win this. With maybe a slightly different decision, run the ball on that 2-point conversion, they win this. Right?
Yeah, the one thing I would say though is that I did feel like Josh Allen he's kind of going into the like Mahomes mode of the last couple years in that like he's not flashy anymore. He's like controlling the game. And that scares me a little bit. Like
Yeah,
that's one thing that really scares me. Like I used to always count on the recklessness coming out, and he did against us. He threw a pick on fourth down this year, and there's still, but like he didn't do a lot in that game, and that worries me. Like if he's
yeah,
able to contain himself, I'm a little more scared of him.
yeah. I mean, right, and I do think sort of. I mean, either one would have been like a marquee matchup, Ravens Chiefs or Bills Chiefs. But given the history, there's like I think slightly more history, Bills Chiefs, and so this is going to be fun to watch
Yeah.
for everyone, maybe, but Chiefs and Bills fans. But
And the other thing too is not that that's the predictive of anything, but we've only lost to Lamar once, and it was on that like Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumble game that I attended, unfortunately.
yeah, of course, the one you went to.
Yeah, so I think there's that too. Whereas Josh Allen has beaten us a lot, even if he hasn't in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was this year, so that makes this even more right. That makes that
Yeah.
interesting too. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't often feel bad for the Ravens, but I did in this one. You can call me not a true Steelers fan if you want, but they're just a fun team to watch when they're clicking, and they were definitely clicking in the second half here.
Yeah, it's hard for me to feel bad for teams that I know are coming at us. I'm like, I know you want us and you want to beat us, so it's hard for me to feel bad for you.
Yeah, I don't have that. I'm just like the peasant looking up here, like, wow, look at these really good teams. Right. Do you want to predict? I guess the first one would be, I think it's Eagles Commanders first, right?
Yeah. I mean, the honest answer is I don't know. I mean, I think the Eagles are going to win because they have the better roster. It's kind of like last year. Jaden Daniels is really impressive to me. A rookie has never taken a team to the Super Bowl, I don't think. Dan Marino did it in his second year. Mahomes
Yeah.
did it in his second year starting, but third year. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the Eagles are going to run all over the Commanders, and I think the Commanders are going to be fun, but I think it's actually going to be a little bit of a separation. The Eagles have a good defense. Let me say like 30-17, the Eagles. Oh,
Okay.
17's too low. They're going to score more than that. Sorry. 35-24, Eagles.
Oh, that's a high offensive output for the Eagles. I mean, but yeah, I'm similarly unsure about this, but I guess it feels like almost a coin flip. I would lean Eagles slightly just because, I mean, they've played twice in both. Well,
I
they
think they
split their
split.
meetings
They
this year,
split,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and the second one, Pickett was starting, so you gotta, factor that in. Um, but I think, I think the Eagles both dominated time of possession both times they played this year, and I kind of think that might happen again. So in that case, the Commanders are going to have to be very disciplined. They have to make the most of every opportunity because I don't think the Eagles. I don't think they're going to stop the Eagles from holding the ball for a while. So that makes it like a uphill battle, and that's why I would pick the Eagles. But I would not be surprised if the Commanders come out of this.
Yeah.
Maybe like 20, 27, let's say 26-24 Eagles.
Well, I think I'm going to go back to my original 30-17. I think that the Eagles are going to have long drives. It's going to be really cold. I want to believe Jaden Daniels can put up like a ton of points in this situation, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of like when teams would go into New England and it was really cold. New England didn't look that good, but they just like kind of squeezed, like ended the other team's will, and I think that might happen.
Yeah.
30-17, let's say.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's hard to be a super accurate passer and make the most of every drive in very cold weather when it's easy to drop passes and whatnot. And now the fun one, Chiefs Bills.
Yeah.
You want to go first or should I go first?
I'll let you go first.
So I did have, I'm trying to remember what my developed thoughts on this were. Um, I think it's hard to beat the Chiefs twice in 1 year. It's hard to beat the Chiefs once in 1 year, and twice especially hard. I think the Chiefs, like there's a narrative where like the Bills have more motivation here, but both teams have plenty of motivation. They're trying to get to the Super Bowl. I don't think that's really a factor. I think the Chiefs win this, but I think it's a nail biter the whole way. Um, but that's how they've done it this year. They win nail biters or tense ones. So I think 24-23 Chiefs. Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think it's really similar. I think that it'll be one of those, because last year's game when we played in Buffalo, I think people forget that it wasn't really like as close. It was one of those where, excuse me, the Chiefs had a chance to go up 2 possessions and McCole Hardman fumbled out of the back of the end zone. Um, and like, we were up 27-24 and they were coming down to kick a field goal, but we had enough time to come back down. And I think I'm supremely confident Mahomes would have won that game if they had made the field goal that they missed. I think this is going to be a little more of a nail biter. I think that it'll be a similar script where it's like the Bills seem very scary early on, and we like kind of get back into the game. This is how we play them. Like early on, everyone's like, "Oh, this is the time. The Bills got them," and then we get back into the game, usually due to a turnover, and then I'm going to say 26-24 Chiefs. I think we actually have to come down and kick a game-winning field goal this time to win it, and I think it's going to be one of those games that like I don't feel great about it. I'm not going to feel great, but I would say that was true in the AFC title game against the Bengals 2 years ago for sure. And then I'm drawing the Ravens game going into Baltimore. I did not feel great last year either. Like I feel like it's one of those where it's like it's going to be very hard. I think, but I think they might. I think they're going to pull it out. I think Steve Spagnuolo is ready, and I think the Chiefs are ready. They're extremely, like, they want this to repeat really badly. And I think as much as I think the Bills want this, I feel like we can cover their receivers. I'm worried about their run game, but I don't think we're just not the team that seems to get beaten by a run game. And I think we can cover. Josh Allen's going to be scary. He's going to make some really big plays. I think Mahomes will have a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, the Mahomes Allen narrative is awesome to watch from a third party point of view in this one. So I'm gonna be I'm gonna be enjoying it no matter what happens. But well, I guess I could see ways I don't enjoy this game, but I expect to enjoy this game. This should be a good one, and I feel like this will probably be more objectively interesting than the Super Bowl. But Super Bowl, of course, has the added benefit of being the Super Bowl. So there's that too.
Right. Well, I guess that's it for the podcast this week. Thanks to all of you that follow along and that engage, and that I wonder if people will have comments about the rant. We will see. We
Yeah.
might be reading those next week.
Yeah.
But enjoy championship weekend, and let's all hope the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk soon.
Until next time.